Worked your entire life, diligently putting money aside. You have a nice little nest egg, enough for retirement, maybe a new car, or your kid's education. You feel secure. Now, imagine waking up one morning to find that all of it, every single penny, is worth about as much as a handful of dust. That's not a hypothetical horror story. That was the reality for millions of Bulgarians in early 1997. One day, a person's life savings could buy a small apartment. The next, maybe a loaf of bread, if they were lucky. This wasn't a slow decline, it was a financial avalanche that buried an entire nation's wealth practically overnight. The currency, the Bulgarian lev, went into a complete freefall. Think of it like a skydiver jumping out of a plane without a parachute, and the ground is made of economic ruin. In the autumn of 1996, you might have needed about 70 leva to get $1. By the time the dust started to settle in early 1997, you needed over 3,000. For the average person, this was catastrophic. A graduate's monthly salary, once a source of pride and a ticket to a decent life, suddenly couldn't even cover the cost of a few basic groceries for the week. The numbers on the banknotes stayed the same, but their power to buy anything had simply evaporated into thin air. This sudden, shocking poverty was a brutal awakening. Families, who had considered themselves middle class, were plunged into a desperate struggle for survival. Imagine having to explain to your children why the money you had yesterday can't buy food today. The psychological toll was immense. Trust in the entire system, the government, the banks, the very concept of money, was shattered. People's entire life's work, their dreams for the future, and their sense of security were wiped out in a matter of weeks. It was a national trauma, a collective experience of watching your financial world crumble before your very eyes. The story of the 1997 crisis serves as a terrifying reminder of how fragile an economy can be. It shows how abstract concepts like inflation and monetary policy have very real, very painful consequences for ordinary people. For Bulgarians, it wasn't just an economic event, it was a defining moment of hardship that reshaped the country and the lives of everyone in it. It's a story of how a nation went to bed one night and woke up in a completely different and much poorer world. The money in their pockets hadn't changed, but its value had been stolen while they slept. So, how does a country's currency spontaneously combust? Well, it doesn't. It takes a perfect storm of bad decisions, a sort of masterclass in economic mismanagement. The seeds of Bulgaria's crisis were sown long before 1997. A key ingredient in this recipe for disaster was the country's banking system. After the fall of communism, banks were propped up by the government. They were lending out huge sums of money to unprofitable state-owned companies and well-connected insiders. It was less like a banking system, and more like a private ATM for a select few. And, spoiler alert, the cash was about to run out for everyone else. This reckless lending created a mountain of bad debt. The banks had no real money to back up the savings people had deposited. It was a house of cards waiting for a slight breeze. That breeze came in 1996 when the system started to buckle. One by one, banks began to fail. In September of that year, 9 of them collapsed, locking people out of their own accounts. Imagine going to an ATM and finding the bank has just gone. The money you thought was safe was trapped, and panic started to set in. This triggered a classic bank run, where everyone rushed to pull their money out of the remaining banks, accelerating the collapse. On top of this banking fiasco, the government was making things exponentially worse. To cover its massive debts and keep those failing state enterprises afloat, the Bulgarian National Bank did the one thing you should never do in a fragile economy. It started printing money. Lots and lots of it. This is the economic equivalent of trying to put out a fire with gasoline. The more leva they printed, the less each individual lev was worth. This is the textbook definition of hyperinflation. The government was essentially diluting the value of its own currency into oblivion, trying to solve a debt problem by creating a currency crisis. So you had a toxic cocktail banks built on a foundation of bad loans, a government refusing to let failed businesses die, and a central bank printing money like there was no tomorrow. It was a chain reaction of terrible choices. Each bad decision amplified the next, pushing the economy closer to the edge. The banking collapse destroyed trust, and the government's money-printing antics destroyed the currency's value. The stage was perfectly set for the complete economic meltdown that would soon bring the nation to its knees and its people into the streets. As hyperinflation took hold, daily life in Bulgaria descended into a grim battle for survival. The winter of 1996 to 97 became known as the winter of discontent, and for good reason. With the lev becoming more worthless by the hour, shopkeepers couldn't keep up. Prices would change multiple times a day. You could walk into a store in the morning to buy milk, find you couldn't afford it, and by the afternoon the price would have doubled again. Essential goods, like bread, sugar, and cooking oil, became scarce. Rationing was introduced, and long, desperate queues formed outside shops in the freezing cold, often for nothing. This economic chaos quickly boiled over into social and political unrest. The Bulgarian people, having lost their savings and now struggling to feed their families, had reached their breaking point. They knew who to blame. The government whose corruption and incompetence had led them into this mess. Starting in January 1997, massive protests erupted across the country. Hundreds of thousands of people took to the streets of Sofia and other major cities day after day demanding change. They weren't just asking politely, they were furious. Their peaceful future had been stolen and they wanted it back. The protests were not just peaceful marches, the anger was palpable. On one occasion, demonstrators stormed and set fire to the parliament building in Sofia. It was a powerful, visceral symbol of the people's rage against a political class that had failed them so profoundly. The government, led by the Bulgarian Socialist Party, was paralyzed. They had lost all credibility. The police were deployed, clashes ensued, but the people would not back down. The country was on the brink of civil war. The government had lost control not only of the economy, but of the country itself. Ultimately, the pressure was too much to bear. The government collapsed. The president refused to give the ruling party the mandate to form a new government, siding with the protesters and calling for new elections. The winter of discontent had achieved its goal. The people, through their sheer determination and righteous anger, had toppled the government they held responsible for their ruin. But this was only the first step. The country was still in economic shambles, and the question remained, how do you possibly fix a catastrophe of this magnitude? The protests had won a political victory, but the economic war was far from over. With the old government gone and a new one in place, Bulgaria needed a radical solution. You can't just put a bandage on a wound this deep. The answer came in the form of a currency board, which was introduced on July 1, 1997. Now, a currency board sounds like a boring committee meeting, but it was one of the most drastic economic reforms a country can undertake. In simple terms, Bulgaria voluntarily put its currency in a straitjacket. The new system legally pegged the Bulgarian lev to a strong, stable foreign currency, the German Deutsche Mark. The exchange rate was fixed at 1,000 leva to 1 Deutsche Mark. The most important rule of the currency board was this: the Bulgarian National Bank could no longer print money whenever it felt like it. Not a single new lev could be put into circulation unless it was fully backed by foreign currency reserves, specifically German marks, held by the central bank. This effectively took away the government's ability to finance its spending by starting up the printing presses. It was a self-imposed monetary prison, designed to restore trust and kill hyperinflation instantly. If people knew every lev was backed by a solid mark, they would start believing in their money again. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Hyperinflation stopped dead in its tracks. With a stable currency, prices stabilized and shops began to fill up again. The chaos subsided. Of course, this came at a cost. By tying its hands, Bulgaria gave up its power to use monetary policy to stimulate the economy, for instance, by lowering interest rates during a recession. It was a harsh, but necessary medicine. The currency board was meant to be a temporary fix, but it worked so well that it remained in place for decades, forcing a long-term discipline on the government's finances. This long period of strict discipline paved the way for Bulgaria's future. When Germany adopted the euro, the lev's peg was seamlessly transferred to the euro. For nearly 3 decades, Bulgaria operated as if it were already in the eurozone, enduring global financial crises without the ability to devalue its currency. This discipline made its recent official adoption of the euro on January 1st of this year, 2026, feel less like a dramatic leap and more like a final, logical step. The painful lesson of 1997 taught Bulgaria that financial stability, even when achieved through drastic measures, is the only foundation for a prosperous future.